Let's move on to agenda item 14. This is public hearing number 4, consideration of draft district maps and election sequencing for the district-based election system. Selection of district map and election sequence, introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yuba City, California, adding sections 2-9.04, 2-9.05, and 2-9.06 to Chapter 2 of Title 9 of the Yuba City Municipal Code to establish a district-based system of elections for members of the City Council. Tonight, we have Mr. Robert McIntyre here. Is he here?
It doesn't look like Mr. McIntyre is here. He was here, but he's not right now, so I'll go ahead and cover this until he gets in, if that's okay with you, Mayor.
That would be fine.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, members of the public. As you know, this has been quite a process as we've been going through the transition from at-large elections to the districting, elections by district. This is the 4th hearing in a series of hearings that have been done. There were 2 initial hearings where the City Council received multiple public input and provided opportunities for the community to provide input as what they would think districting would look like and what would work for the community, including communities of interest and keeping groups together. As you know, at the December 21st meeting, the City Council made it in what I would call a preliminary selection under the California Voting Rights Act of what is called the green map and the green map sequencing. The green map is in your staff report, and it's also available online along with all the other maps. And the sequencing would have districts 1, 2, and 3 in 2022 and districts 4 and 5 in 2024 for election purposes. There were notices that were put out in both Spanish, Punjab, and English. There have been no additional public comments or maps which have been received. I shouldn't say public comments, no additional proposed maps which were received by the deadline of July 18th. And so we are here tonight looking at the first ordinance. We have Robert here as well, who is available for any questions that you may have. And other than that, I think that should do it from our end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaffin. Mr. McIntyre, you have the floor.
So is this working? Okay. So as you heard from council, you've been through a rather vigorous process. Thank you. Thus far with the first public hearing and second public hearing where we talked about concepts, you came back and covered the 3 draft maps that were available to you and had a vigorous conversation about the pros and cons of each. From a policy perspective, you heard from your community members regarding some of those policy considerations and what they considered to be important around the concepts of neighborhoods and communities of interest. And so at the end of the last meeting, you really narrowed down to that last green map. And here in the viewer, we can see, we have the ability to zoom in and move around and look at the green map at the most detailed level if you'd like. But the purpose of tonight, unless there is a change in consensus of the board and a desire to consider other maps, really what we're hoping to do with the public hearing tonight is get kind of final input from the community around those topics that have to do with neighborhoods and communities of interest, and then hopefully hear from the council and just kind of round out that conversation on some of the policy considerations that you've been thinking about on the pros and cons of this map before, if it is in fact moved forward for ordinance. If it is, then we also have to have that conversation around the sequence of elections. The map as submitted from NDC suggested that the sequence of elections would include districts 1, 2, and 3 in the 2022 election and 4 and 5 in the 2024 election. We do know that District 2 has 2 people paired, 2 council members paired, which unfortunately, given the Federal Voting Rights Act and the Fair Maps Act and the State California Voting Rights Act, it was unavoidable, unfortunately. And so this map, based on prior conversation, did a really nice job of striking a balance between those 3 legal criteria, but also observing some of the traditional districting criteria by observing the will of the voters in the last election. Did you have any specific questions about the map itself?
Is there any questions from the council at this time before we start the public hearing? All right. And if you have no objection, we'll go into the public hearing. Okay? The public hearing on the public hearing number 4, consideration of draft district maps and election sequencing for a district-based election system, selection of a district map and election sequence, introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yuba City, California, adding sections 2-9.04, 2-9.05, and 2-9.06 to Chapter 2, Title 9 of the Yuba City Municipal Code to establish a district-based system of elections for members of the City Council is now open. If there's any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. And do we have any comments from the public? And we do have 2 that came in via email. Sierra, if you'd like to.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the emails that we received this afternoon. The first is from Harjeet Singh. It says, my name is Harjeet Singh and I am a Yuba City resident. I am providing input on the city's redistricting process and the proposed maps. After going through each map, here's what I have found. Out of the 3 proposed maps, NDC Green does the best job of meeting redistricting requirements. However, there are still some areas of improvement for it. District 3 is cutting into neighborhoods that should be part of District 4. In order to keep this community of interest intact, I recommend that the city extend the easternmost part of District 4 to Walton Avenue. I look forward to seeing these changes being implemented and thank the council for their leadership in the redistricting process. Second email is from Rena Thiara. My name is Rena and I am a Yuba City resident. I'm writing to you today to give my input in regards to the redistricting process that is currently taking place for city council districts and the draft maps that have been proposed. As a member of the Punjabi community, I strongly believe that out of the 3 maps that have been proposed, the NDC Green is the best at representing my community. Though this map is much better at representing my community than the orange and purple maps, there are still some very important changes that are needed to be made in this map for it to accurately represent the Punjabi community living in Yuba City. District 4 and 3 split the Punjabi community in half, and the Punjabi neighborhoods that are placed within District 3 should be kept together with the rest of the Punjabi community district in District 4. Therefore, I ask the city to extend the easternmost part of District 4 to Walton Avenue. This will ensure that this community of interest, the Punjabi community living in District 4, which shares the same language, culture, places of worship, is kept together. I look forward to seeing these changes being made by the council, and I want to thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Is there any other comments from the public tonight? Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, is there any other comments online? Is there any comments from the council? Okay, hearing none, then we will, hearing no further comments on the issue, I'm closing the public hearing and bringing it back to the council for action. Does the council have any questions?
Yes, I have one. As per the questions that came in, at this part in the game, it's unrealistic to think that those lines could be adjusted. Am I correct to say in saying that?
Well, the reason I scanned in on the map is because I see Walton here between 3 and 4. And so I have to look at the number of people in these census blocks. And what I see is if I move all the way over to Walton Avenue here, I've got 945, 120. So I worry about population balance if I were to make that move all the way over. That's part of what we were struggling with because otherwise that's also why we would have gone straight up Tharp Street. We would have continued all the way up and cut over higher. If it weren't for the population balancing. So that's why we've got that kind of that jog, right? That's why we've got this jog here. That's why we didn't capture this section here. and keep pushing the whole top part of the council district over for the same reason. It was population.
Thank you.
balancing.
And if I could just add one thing to that, Mayor, if that's fine with you.
Yes, sir.
That is under the, as Robert has said previously, under the California Voting Rights Act and the other laws that are applicable, we have to keep a certain amount of balance. There's only so many people you can have in one district or the other. And the District 4 is already one of the biggest districts already. And if it were to take on additional population, there would be problems with having one district overpopulated and the other districts underpopulated that have to have adjustments around, which would hit our boundaries and stuff as well. So I think with this particular map, Robert has done a very good job of balancing out the requirements, at least under the law, to make sure that the right numbers are in the right districts. Thank you.
All right. Looking for
Through the
questions.
mayor, not necessarily a question, more of a comment, which is, I know when we embarked on this project of districting, there was a fair level of confusion. Why the heck is the city doing this? And aside from the fact that there's Voters' Right Acts and other legal requirements to do so, it was time for Yuba City to consider it to avoid legal problems. So as we continue to move forward with this process, I think it's important to note that through the help of our demographer and our council and the deliberations and staff is to continue to be transparent and make this districting process, which is brand new to Yuba City, as legally defendable as possible. And therefore, I think that by virtue of the stuff that we have been through as a council and the public and with our help, is the green map and the sequencing provided by such is the most legally defensible. It doesn't include any gerrymandering, none of that kind of shenanigans that sometimes goes on in communities. So I would be happy when the time is right to initiate the motion to continue on with this process, but I don't want to shut anybody else out from comment first.
Thank you, through
Mr.
the mayor.
Miller?
Thanks. I do appreciate the input by the two community members. I think I want to acknowledge the fact that they've taken the time to really go through these maps, and sincerely appreciate you giving your input. And I agree that NC Green Map is the best map in the balance of the work, and we hired a very well-known, reputable, transparent, honest firm to help us walk through this process. So, but I just want to thank the two people that provided some input.
Councilmember Harris. All right. Then I bring it back for action.
I think this is going to be a tricky motion, so
Councilmember, if you are inclined to improve the green map, all you need to do is read item D.
okay, that's where I was going to go. I'd like to make a motion. Do I need to read the whole thing, or can I just abbreviate it by saying item D is staff presented?
I'm so sorry, you have to, in this particular instance, please read the whole thing by title. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to do that? No, okay. I'd like to introduce and make a motion in item D of the staff report under item number 14 to introduce through the first reading by title only with further reading waived an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yuba City, California, adding sections 2-9.04, 2-9.05, and 2-9.06 to Chapter 2, Title 9 of the Yuba City Municipal Code to establish a district-based system of elections for members of the City Council and set the next public hearing and second reading of the ordinance for February 1, 2022.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre, for being here.